Hello everyone. Let's discuss about validation based protocol. There are many protocols which we know, timestamp ordering protocol, log based protocols. Besides such protocols, you have validation based protocol. So if you can understand within a schedule, there can be n number of transactions which are going in parallel, which are getting executed in parallel. So when the transactions are getting executed in parallel, all such executions must be done in concurrent to each other, so that they are not going to give us any invalid results from the database or invalid results to the database. So any protocol, whenever it is being followed, it has to check for the control of such concurrency for all the transactions within a schedule. So as such, when you come to validation based protocol, this is basically called as optimistic concurrency control protocol. This particular protocol is used to optimistically control the concurrency among the transactions within a single schedule, within a particular schedule. Because in validation based protocol, what actually happens is all the transactions will be executing fully, and it is must that all the transactions must be executed fully. Only then atomicity can be obtained. If not, either the transaction must completely roll back, but it is not supposed to work or execute up to half about there and then resume. There is nothing like that. As such, in order to even provide the atomicity for the transactions, we will be using validation based protocol, because this is called as optimistic concurrency control protocol. Okay, so why only this particular protocol is given with such a name is the question. When that is the question, because validation based protocol majorly concentrates on validation phase That means along with validation phase, there are two other phases for any transaction. Those are read phase and write phase. So whenever you are saying that within a schedule, transactions are being executed concurrently, parallelly, it means that all the transactions will be undergoing all these three phases. Okay, so one of it is said to be a read phase, is the first phase. Next it is the validation phase, and next it is the write phase. So when you consider read phase for a transaction, for any transaction, when you consider read phase, this is only used to read the variables and write some data to some temporary local variables. Only that is being performed in the read phase. This is basically used only to read the data from the database. When you consider the validation phase, whenever we say that if you wanted to attain serializability within a schedule, because transactions are getting executed in parallel, as a result it has to undergo validation phase. Okay, that means in order to attain serializability, any transaction will undergo a validation test to determine, to understand, to know whether local variables can be written without violating any serializability. Because the transactions are being executed in parallel, you should have serial schedule. Suppose if you don't have serial schedule, that means it is a non-serial schedule. For such non-serial schedule, you should be able to provide serializability. Only then you can say that you are able to retrieve the appropriate data whenever required. Okay, so validation phase undergoes such validation test, always checks for serializability within a non-serial schedule. And the next phase for any transaction is, that is a write phase. This write phase is used to perform any updates to the transaction, write any updates, write any operations, perform certain updations to the database, and those are all applied to the database. Otherwise, if it is unable to get updated, if TI is validated, that means if any transaction after validating, the updates are applied to the database, that is fine. If they are unable to get updated, then the transaction should roll back. Only then you will be able to attain atomicity. First of all, you should try to read, then validate the data, make sure that you are providing serializability, and then go for updating the data. If you are unable to do any of these things, please get back to the beginning of the transaction. That means the entire transaction gets rolled back. The best example, you go to your ATM machine. Okay, you try to withdraw certain amount. This is one transaction, right? You're trying to withdraw certain amount. Okay, you entered your PIN number, you entered the amount got deducted from your account, everything got fine, but you're unable to get the money. Then what happens immediately? What is your proper this thing there? You can't know what to do, yes or no. So what will you do? Immediately you'll be calling the customer care, because you are trying to withdraw 10,000, but 10,000 is not in your hands, but it is deducted from the account which is already available. Yes or no? That means that is a failed transaction. So when such case is there, what do? You immediately call the customer care and tell them that, or ask for certain details regarding your account. Then immediately, if the bank is in a proper condition, then immediately they'll give you certain information stating that yes, of course the balance is deducted, but as we couldn't provide you the money, as you didn't get the money, it means that the balance is again, the deducted amount is again rolled back to the, or given back to the account. This is nothing but rolling back. This is nothing but rolling back. If that particular transaction is aborted, where when it got deducted from your account and we are not getting the amount from the ATM, if that is aborted, it is a disaster, yes or no? Such things should not be happened for any transaction. So in order to prevent such situations, what do? You just roll back. If you are unable to update the data in the database from 50,000, if I am unable to update it with drawing 10,000 from that account, okay, when that is done, I should immediately roll back. So TI should be rolled back. Only then the atomicity feature can be enabled. Yes or not? Atomicity characteristic can be reached. So what do we say is, all these three phases, read phase, write phase, or validation phase, all these three phases are done in an interleaved fashion. Interleaved fashion is nothing but one after the other. But all these three phases must be performed within any transaction. That is for sure. That is for sure. So for all these phases, you will be providing it with certain timestamp. Okay, each transaction is said to have certain timestamps. Those are three, that is start, validation, and finish. These are the three timestamps. When TI determines the transaction, let it be transaction 1, transaction 2, or transaction N. Let it be transaction. So start of TI determines that the time when transaction, a particular transaction T1, let us suppose T1 has started its execution. Validation of TI determines the time when T1 has entered its validation phase. TI is T1. And finish of TI, the time when TI has finished its write phase. Write phase is nothing but you completely finished writing, updating the data to the database. Okay, so these three timestamps must be performed by any transaction, always by any transaction. And at validation phase, at this validation timestamp, you are going to attain serializability. You are going to attain serializability so that concurrency can be increased among the transactions within a schedule. Okay, so always whenever you talk about timestamp of a particular transaction, then it means that at that point of time, timestamp is nothing but the point of time. Okay, at that point of time, validation phase is going on. That is what it means in general with respect to any database transactions. If you say that the timestamp of a particular transaction, then it means that it is the value of validation of TA. Okay, that means at that point of time, validation phase is going on. It means that. Okay, so this particular validation based protocol, because this is also called as optimistic concurrency control, this is used to increase or give greater degree of concurrency, which is what we have seen till now. Okay, and the probability of conflicts is also very low. Okay, now there are certain conditions for this particular validation based protocol. For any protocol, you'll be having certain conditions, and these conditions must be held. These conditions must be held. That means, see, if you see, look at this timestamp. We are saying that timestamp of TI, we have taken two transactions, TI and TJ. It is T1, T2 or T2, T3 or some T1, T10, some comparison between two transactions. And in that timestamp of TI, that means at this point validation phase is going on. Timestamp of TI is less than timestamp of TJ if we say so. If we say so, what are the conditions that has to be valid, that has to be held, are determined like this. See, it means that when you say that TI has started first than TJ, then in that case, the finish of transaction TI must be less than the start of TJ. It will be something like this. If I can annotate here, see, if you consider T1 is a transaction, something like this, T1, and this is T2, if this is the case. Okay, so what happens here is, I am saying that finish of TI, I am saying that this has started, T1 has started, which is less than, let me suppose this has started at 9 o'clock and T2 has started at 10 o'clock, let us suppose. When this is the case, if you can look here, timestamp of T1 is less than timestamp of T2. That means it has started first, this has started later. Okay, when this will be held, or according to this, what are the conditions that can be held are, finish of TI can be less than start of TJ. That means you have performed certain operations and your finish of timestamp is, let us suppose, at 9:30. Let us suppose at 9:30. Okay, this is what happened at 9:30. 9:30. And what is start of TJ? Start of TJ. TJ, let us suppose it has started at 10 o'clock. Now, if I say the timestamp of TI is less than timestamp of TJ, it means that the transaction T1 is finished before the start of TJ. Even this condition can be valid as well. The start of TJ, this is the start of TJ at 10 o'clock, is less than, let us suppose, the finish of transaction TI is at 11 o'clock and this is performing its validation phase at 12 o'clock, let us suppose. Okay, even this condition can be held. These are the two conditions. One is something like this and the other one is something like this. Okay, so what are we telling here? I am saying that transaction TI, timestamp of TI is less than timestamp of TJ. When I say so, either the transaction T1 might have completed first when compared to that of transaction T2 before it gets started. Maybe that can be the possibility, or the other possibility can be, let us suppose this has already started. Still this has not yet finished. This has already started, but now this has finished, and later after this has finished, transaction TI has finished, TJ has started its validation phase. Even this condition can also be held. Even this condition can also be held when you say timestamp of TI is less than timestamp of TJ. That means the data items of T1 and T2 never intersect with each other. Only then the validation will get succeeded and TJ can be committed. When I say this is finished, immediately it can be committed, no issues. In this case, wherein this validation is going on, here after validation, after writing, it will get committed. TJ gets committed. Otherwise, this entire validation fails and TJ will be aborted. Is this clear? So what it is saying, finish of TI is less than start of TJ. That is one condition. Next condition is start of TJ is less than finish of TI is less than validation of TJ, and the set of data items written by TI does not intersect with the set of data items read by TJ. That means there should be no intersection between this, so that only then we can have a successful transaction. Otherwise, TJ has to be rolled back. This is what happens in terms of validation based protocol. In terms of timestamp of TI is less than timestamp of TJ. Is this clear? Next, yeah, this is what is explained here. Timestamp of TI is less than timestamp of TJ. That is what is explained here. Same thing. Next, it is something like this. We have seen. So always timestamp of Ti must be less than timestamp of Tj when those two conditions are satisfied. When those two conditions are satisfied. See, if you can look at this example here. One second, let me erase this. If you can look at the example, yeah, the example is given properly. That is, valid timestamp of Ti is less than timestamp of Tj 230, 237. This is for the second condition. Start of Ti is less than finish of start of Tj is less than finish of Ti is less than validation of Tj. So what is happening here? We are saying that the data items must not get conflict each other. When will the data items get conflict? If there are both read operations, there is no conflict. But if there is one read or at least one write in any of the transactions, then there will be a conflict. Yes or no? So that is what we are saying here. You should not when you use this particular validation based protocols, you will not have conflicting operations. Okay, see, first you have started with read operation, write of A, you started with read of B, and then read of A you started. This particular condition does not satisfy condition 2. Second condition, that is start of Ti is less than start of Tj is less than finish of Ti is less than validation of Tj. This doesn't get, because this Tj has to be committed. Only then you will be able to write the data to the operations. Is this clear? This is what happens in terms of validation based protocol. You say that validation based protocol, the other name for validation based protocol is optimistic concurrency control, because it is going to give us greater degree of concurrency, because the probability of conflicts is very low, because you are following these two conditions. Only if you are able to look or find these two conditions, only then you can say that the validation based protocol is able to give you optimistic concurrency control. And by using this validation phase, we will be going for validation test to determine or to convert the non-serial schedule into serializability, to have serializability. We will check whether serializability is available or not by using in the validation test. This is performed when this is performed in the validation phase of a transaction. So two things to be kept in mind here. One is every transaction will be going through three phases. That is one thing: read phase, validation phase, and write phase. The other thing is all the transactions will have a particular timestamp: start timestamp, validation timestamp, and finish timestamp. The entire transactions will be working on both these conditions only, these phases and timestamps. And we are saying that there will be a greater degree of concurrency. That greater degree of concurrency will be achieved using these particular timestamps by following these conditions here. Okay, so that you can commit the transaction Tj without any problem. This is what is called as validation based protocol. This is one of the examples. You can just go through this example, understand the same explanation is explained in terms of examples. Hope everything is clear. Thank you guys.